Hello, I'm John Rossi, a touring drummer with a love of all things animal. When I'm on the road, I visit as many zoos, aquariums... Hey, wait a minute. What's going on? Hey, what's going on there? Hello? 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 We interrupt your regularly scheduled program to bring you Rossifari Zoo news. News you can use from the world of zoos and conservation. Every week, we bring you breaking news and analysis from around the globe, featuring the animals you love and the people who care for them. And here's your anchorman, John Rossi.
Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to Rossifari Zoo News, your look at everything going on in the world of zoos, aquariums, and conservation organizations. So yeah, y'all, as I'm preparing this episode, it hasn't happened yet, but by the time you listen to this, the Lehigh Valley Zoo Red Panda exhibit will officially be open with the Rossifari podcast community as one of the sponsors. Go team! I'm really looking forward to attending the ceremony this upcoming Thursday. Which will be the past Thursday as you're listening to this, and can't wait to see the new pandas and the new exhibit there. Other than that, there's not a ton of new stuff going on in my world, but I do have a funny story I want to tell you about my gigs in North Carolina last week. Okay, so I told y'all that I was heading down to play a few shows of Great Balls of Fire, one of my favorite projects I'm a part of. Quick side note. I'm such a nerd. I apologize in advance for this, but just because I keep seeing this online, even from people that I consider very smart. Apart, in the way I just used it, is two words. A space part. Apart, one word, means the literal opposite. It means you are not part of something. This seems to be getting lost online a lot, and I keep seeing people saying things like, it was such a joy to be a part of this show. And I always want to comment that I'm sorry they weren't able to be in the show, but I don't, want to be that guy online. So instead, I'll be that guy on my podcast where y'all, somewhere between tolerate and love me. But I digress. Anyway, some of my friends from the Greensboro Science Center wanted to come and see the show, so I decided to go check if we had seats still available so I could get them comps. And when I went to the webpage, it didn't say Great Balls of Fire. It said Jerry Lee Lewis and Friends. And the poster was a picture of Jerry Lee Lewis, like the actual one, the guy who is, dead and thus not performing these shows, or any shows because dead. The poster also said, performing hits like Great Balls of Fire, Your Cheating Heart, Breathless, and more. Y'all, we don't play Your Cheating Heart or Breathless in the show. Also, and I can't stress this enough, Great Balls of Fire isn't a tribute concert. We all go by our real names. Jason, the leader and pianist of the group, doesn't have blonde hair or a wig. And one of his first lines is, "My name is Jason Cohen, and I'm from New Jersey." The whole idea behind the show is how Jason, and the rest of us, ended up connecting with musical icons like Jerry Lee Lewis, people we really have very little in common with, because of our shared passion and love of music. So yeah, Jerry Lee Lewis and Friends is about as far away from our show as you can get. And then, when we pulled up to the theater, the marquee just said Jerry Lee Lewis in all caps. I was flabbergasted. In all the years I've spent touring the country with various shows, I've seen a lot of weird choices made by the people doing the marketing of shows, but I've never seen anything quite as blatantly over the top as this. And yes, we do. We provide full marketing materials to every theater, so normally they just, use the marketing materials we have. Changing the name of the show and listing songs we don't play is brazen in a way I can't even fully describe. That being said, everyone there was super nice. The audiences loved us. And in the end, we had an amazing time. But I had to share that story. It was too much. Interestingly, the theater did express an interest in bringing in one of my shows, and also possibly in trying to do a live episode recording of Rossifari as part of that weekend. Not saying it's going to happen, but Boy, oh boy, did that get the wheels turning in my brain. Anyway, that's all I've really got to share about all of this. But, quick reminder, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss any zoo news or interview episodes. Make sure you're following along at Rossifari on the socials and at Rossifari Pod on TikTok. And if you'd like to support the podcast, you can do so for as little as $3 a month by going to patreon.com/Rossifari. Reviews always help. And of course, don't forget to tag me in or send me stories for Zoo News, and I'll say your name at the end of the episode. So without further ado, let's get to it. All right, so Poop It Out is an actually really prescient way to start this segment because we have a story that is just all kinds of crappy. So we've been following the story of the Natural Bridge Zoo in Virginia, and we have an update that is concerning. So, to remind you of what we've discussed before, the Natural Bridge Zoo is an unaccredited facility that was raided by police in December amongst multiple allegations of animal abuse. Multiple animals were confiscated, and the zoo was closed down temporarily. In February and March, a legal battle played out over the fate of those animals and whether they should be returned to the zoo or not, with the end results being a mixed bag. The judge basically said that animals that had been proven to have been mistreated were to remain safely away from the zoo, while animals where abuse or neglect couldn't be proven would be returned to the facility, which honestly might be the dumbest thing I've said on here, at least in quite a while. But hey, that was the ruling. There was also some controversy about a tiger that lived at the facility, which the facility claimed was euthanized by the investigators, but which people who worked at the facility said was dead before the investigators showed up. It was all one big, ugly mess. But then, as often happens, the world moved on. All the animals were safe, he says with huge exaggerated air quotes, and life went on. But it seems like the deception isn't exactly over yet. So the zoo has now reopened, still with no accreditation, and they were careful to let the public know they have reopened under new management. So at least we know that the people who were in charge of the terrible situation are gone now, right? Right? Well, it looks like that's not quite the case. In the press release, the zoo said, quote, "The park will be operating from a different approach. The facility has gone under new ownership and new management. Dramatic changes have been made to introduce a more innovative and interactive experience. Keepers will be present for up-close encounters with select species. Please come and join us and show your much appreciated support." So, okay, right off the bat, that release made alarm bells start ringing in my head. Stating that up-close encounters will now just be part of the zoo, given the recent history of the zoo, concerns me. And yes, I realize that many great accredited zoos do up-close encounters, and even more, I recognize the fact that I get to have innumerable up-close encounters because of the podcast. But those are controlled environments at accredited facilities. There may be nothing wrong with what's going on at Natural Bridge Zoo and their new encounters, but without them being more specific in their release, I at least have to be concerned. Things like tiger cub petting are often referred to as up-close encounters in promotional materials as well, and at this point, the zoo doesn't get the benefit of the doubt until they re-earn public trust. Though, to be clear, I am in no way saying they are engaging in anything like, tiger cub petting. Anyway, I also noticed that the press release mentioned new ownership and new management, but they didn't say who owns or manages the zoo, or give any kind of background on these people. So when pressed by the members of the media, the zoo did finally announce who the new ownership was. The zoo had previously been owned by Carl and Debbie Morgensen and managed by Gretchen Morgensen, which is Carl's daughter and Debbie's stepdaughter. Now the new owners are Gretchen Morgensen and her two brothers. Yeah, so the zoo has stayed in the same family, and the person who was the zoo manager at the time of the raid and all of the proven abuse cases was happening is now the owner. And yet this is being touted as new management and new ownership. Deep sigh. In fact, when speaking to the media, Gretchen said that her and her brothers hope to make the zoo successful to help their parents with their current, quote, devastating financial crisis. The crisis in question, of course, is the financial and legal fallout of the animal abuse case and everything surrounding it. So the new owners are still hoping to use the finances of the zoo to take care of the last owners, but are trying to sell this as a new era for the zoo. It is not a good look. But, to be completely fair, you can't judge a child by the actions of their parents. So maybe this is going to truly be the start of a new direction for the zoo. Maybe? Well, so far, it's not looking good. Even if you get past the questionable nature of the press release touting new ownership that is barely that, and that didn't hint at the new owner's connections to the failings of the previous owners, there is still one other recent press release that has left me feeling a lot of concern. It pertains to Asha, the elephant that called Natural Bridge Zoo home. Asha was a solitary African elephant that lived at the zoo with very little enrichment other than giving people rides all day, often carrying more weight than an elephant can handle without suffering. Even before the animal cruelty charges came up against this zoo, Asha was a subject of concern for many elephant groups, both the kinds that make me roll my eyes and the kinds that I actually understand and respect. And in the press release announcing the new ownership, the zoo also announced that Asha had been retired to an elephant sanctuary. Yay! Some good news indeed. Except that, of course, there was more controversy and confusion about this story as well. A lot of people assumed that Asha was moving to the Elephant Sanctuary in Tennessee, a really beautiful space where elephants retire and get the best care. But no one has seen Asha there. There is, however, a new elephant at Two Tails Ranch in Williston, Florida, and this elephant looks suspiciously like Asha. I've seen some mentions in the press confirming that it is Asha, but I haven't seen anything that I can 100% say with certainty, oh, here is proof that this is Asha. And while I haven't seen that proof, most of the groups tracking this issue do believe that this is Asha that is now at Two Tails Ranch. So what do we know about Two Tails Ranch? Well, their website starts off promisingly enough. All visits are by appointment, which I dig, and you see at a lot of sanctuaries. It's the only privately owned elephant facility of its kind, which is weird, I guess. I don't really know what to do with that. It is supposedly a very peaceful environment for the animals, which is promising. The owner is so passionate about elephants, they started a program called All About Elephants, which strives to educate the public about these amazing animals. Okay, I'm on board with all of this. But then the hammer falls. There's a sentence that says, in private guided tours, you will learn and interact with elephants like nowhere else. Interact. And like nowhere else. Okay. Then under the tour description, it goes further. If you dig a bit, you get to read this. During the tour, you will also get the chance to ride the elephants and feed them. Exclamation point. It says exclamation point. You can ride the elephants again, and they're bragging about this? Ugh, yikes. Imagine my surprise when I got to the end of their webpage and found out that this facility is accredited by the ZAA. Now, I'm not going to lie, this is something I need to look at more closely. I greatly respect the ZAA. We've had lots of ZAA facilities on here. A lot of the people that are complaining about Asha being at this facility are claiming it's a roadside zoo, but the ZAA does not accredit roadside zoos. But there are also elephant rides. I don't love that. I'm going to look into it more, but that is not the point of this deep dive. The Natural Bridge Zoo is. Regardless of whether Two Tails Ranch is a great place for elephants or is the roadside zoo people are claiming it is, or even falls somewhere in betweens, the end result is this. It is not a sanctuary. It may be a legitimately great place. The elephant riding thing makes me feel some serious concerns, but honestly, sometimes elephants actually do worse if they can't continue the behaviors they grew up doing, even if they aren't necessarily what you want to see or what would be considered naturalistic. Some of the best elephant sanctuaries in the world still have elephants that perform because they honestly seemed depressed and anxious when they were taken out of show conditions. Those are their lives and they have learned them. Me drumming with Emily the elephant only made sense because she clearly learned that behavior somewhere and wants to continue doing it, enjoys doing it, and is enriched by doing it. So we did it, and she loved it. I would not have done that, nor would Buttonwood Park have let me do that if it wasn't enriching for her. So maybe the elephant rides are actually something enriching for these elephants that came from that world? I don't know, but I do want to look into this more. However, I can say with certainty that this place is not a sanctuary, and thus Natural Bridge Zoo lied to the public again. I wish I had a happy ending to this deep dive, but we all need to keep our eyes and ears open for more information about what's going on at this place. Maybe it will end up being a redemption story, but if so, this first paragraph of the new chapter has left a lot to be desired. And that brings us to the births and deaths for the week. And last week, I mentioned that I was thinking of moving away from this segment as it just felt repetitive and possibly even kind of hard to retain. And I asked for your opinions about that. And I very much heard them. And every single person I heard from was opposed to the idea of moving away from this. Like, vehemently opposed. And I hear y'all. So here are our births and deaths for the week. We're actually going to start our births section this week with a special report from an on-the-scene reporter who was there. Take it away, Miles.
2 giraffes were born at Lake Tobias Wildlife Park. Their names are Bakari and Tucker.
All right, we'll be back after this quick break.
Hi, this is Kathy Hill from the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program. We're all about restoration projects in progress this season on One Lagoon, One Voice. Learn about the great strides the lagoon community is taking to restore and protect the Indian River Lagoon. Each week, we dive deep into discussions with scientists, resource managers, and nonprofit leaders to explore lagoon issues and solutions. From oyster reefs to clam restoration, algae blooms to muck, you'll learn all about the projects we're tackling to bring the Indian River Lagoon back to health. Click the link in the show notes to follow One Lagoon, One Voice, learn about the IRL Council, and explore our unique lagoon.
You know, my favorite okapi is named Bakari. He lives at the Greensboro Science Center.
Cool! I got to see baby giraffes on my 3rd grade field trip. Thanks to my teacher, Mrs. Cash, for paying for my class to go to Lake Tobias.
Well, all right. Leave it up to my kid to go on a field trip and come back with zoo news. I'm so proud. Beyond that, 2 Canada lynx kittens have been born at the Erie Zoo to parents Hunter and Roxy, who are both first-time parents. 3 meerkat pups or murrelets, have been born at Cheyenne Mountain Zoo to parents Hullabaloo and Sage. The pups haven't been named yet, but their older siblings are named Kerfuffle and Saffron. And I really hope the zoo keeps that theme up with this bunch of murrelets. Zoo New England has announced a new male kookaburra chick that was born in late April at Franklin Park Zoo. The announcement comes now because he is finally starting to test his wings, meaning he will be visible on exhibit soon. And Flamingoland Resort in the UK has announced the birth of a female Nile hippo, or hiplet. This is the first successful birth of a Nile hippo in 7 years in the UK and in 20 years at Flamingoland. The baby is named Aurora, since the Aurora Borealis was visible when the baby was born, and Aurora is doing quite well. Then moving on to deaths. The Virginia Zoo recently said goodbye to Alana, a 5-year-old Asian small-clawed otter that passed away unexpectedly. There were no indications that anything was wrong at all, and then she was just gone. The veterinary team is currently awaiting necropsy results in the hopes of understanding what happened, sending love to the entire team for this devastating loss. Smithsonian's National Zoo has said goodbye to not one, but 2 incredible tamanduas recently. Manny and Cayenne, 2 animals you've seen on Rossifari social media pages many a times, have both passed away. Manny was 19 at the time of his passing and was the oldest tamandua in the SSP. Cayenne was 10 years old, so not nearly as old as Manny, but still past the median life expectancy for the species, which is 9 years. Despite the fact that tamanduas are a solitary species, Manny and Cayenne lived together for most of their time at the zoo, exhibiting a rare and wonderful relationship that was filled with wrestling and cuddling together. The small mammal house at the National Zoo is never going to be quite the same for me again. And last but not least in the deaths section, the amazing hopeful story of Lomalok has come to an end. Now, this is the lion cub at the Lincoln Park Zoo that had to have spinal surgery and has been taking strides forward and occasionally steps backwards on the road to recovery. Sadly, the medical interventions and physical therapy provided stopped showing any forward progress, and the zoo realized that Lomalok was never going to be able to have a full lion life. He then started to show signs of a gastrointestinal obstruction that would have required another intense surgery and a long period of recovery in isolation, so the decision was made to euthanize him. It's such a sad ending to an incredible story, but I do want to remind everyone that it really was an incredible story. Lincoln Park Zoo did such an amazing job and so much amazing work trying to save this animal, and they were so open and transparent about the whole situation that, honestly, I find it all really beautiful. Sad to see him gone, but really proud of the entire team at Lincoln Park Zoo. And then moving on from births and deaths, we get to the rest of our Zoo News section. So we are going to start this section by pointing out that June is Pride Month, and zoos and aquariums have been posting messages about Pride, adding the rainbow to their logos, etc. And the response has been, well, actually, from what I've seen, it's been largely positive. Like, yes, there are clearly people posting stupid stuff, but it's a lot less frequently than I'm used to seeing, which has made me pretty happy. My favorite comments are always the ones bemoaning the fact that whatever zoo or aquarium it is has suddenly gone woke, as though empathy, compassion, inclusivity, and a desire to share about how life really works isn't all the stuff that zoos always do. One thing that has really impressed me is how many comments I have seen that appear to be trolling at first, but actually open up, like, real dialogue. I've seen multiple comments asking things like, what do animals have to do with being gay? And, like, yes, that definitely reads as a troll job. But when other commenters come in and say things like, there are all kinds of same-sex mating behaviors in the animal kingdom, or even, giving specific examples or whatever, I've actually seen a few of the commenters react with surprise and say that they didn't know that. Like actual dialogue and education happening on social media? In comments sections, no less? This is amazing. Now, while these have been the vast minority of the exchanges I've seen, they do encourage me. Since the ideas of education and acceptance are both big parts of Pride, seeing this type of thing, even if only occasionally, actually brings me a lot of joy. Happy Pride, y'all. On a less happy note, Charlotte the stingray is in the news once again. I'm not going to recap the whole crazy story. We've given it more than enough airtime already. But the aquarium where Charlotte lives has announced that she has a reproductive disease and that the masses from the disease are what were originally mistaken as potential pups. So the whole parthenogenesis, or half shark, half ray pup question? Turns out the answer was C, none of the above. Interestingly, when the announcement of the pregnancy was first made, many experts from afar thought it might be this disease and even commented on the post saying as much, but they had their comments deleted and in some cases were blocked by the aquarium. This has been an absolute disaster from the start, and now it's a sad disaster. Research into the disease in question is limited, and the aquarium is working on a treatment plan with experts and plan to share all evidence and information they gain with the scientific community in the hopes of furthering knowledge about the disease. As of this recording, Charlotte appears well overall, despite, having the disease, and there is at least some hope that she will survive this challenge.
All right, we'll be back after this quick break.
What if I told you scientists discovered 100 new species in the deep ocean?
Why did crocodiles survive extinction?
Megalodon. How did it go extinct?
Hey, it's me, Forrest Galante, wildlife biologist. You might know me from Joe Rogan's podcast or my various TV shows like Extinct or Alive and Shark Week. Join me and my friends as we dive into the wild world of animal anomalies and everything wildlife. Don't miss out. Click here to uncover these mind-blowing animal mysteries.
If you don't follow the Denver Zoo on Instagram, now is definitely the time to start doing so. They are spending the entire month doing a conservation countdown featuring the incredible conservation work the zoo has done in its 128-year history. The zoo has supported 600 conservation initiatives in 62 countries and is sharing about those and the incredible animal care they do at the zoo with a special post every day of the month. As people who listen to this podcast, I assume you love the conservation work being done by zoos and aquariums. And if not, boy, have I failed you. So this is definitely something to keep your eyes on if you want to feel inspired. And speaking of the conservation work done at zoos, the Los Angeles Zoo has announced that an 8-year-old female giant otter named Rosario has moved from the zoo to Argentina, where she will be joining a breeding program designed to reintroduce the species into a region where it has been extinct for quite some time. This is the first time a giant otter is going from an AZA facility to contribute directly to conservation efforts, so this is a really big and exciting move. Big props to the LA Zoo. We have an update now on a beloved guest of the podcast, but I don't mean one of the human ones. Instead, I'm talking about Isla the tamandua, one of the ambassador tamanduas at the Cincinnati Zoo. Now, you've heard about her on the podcast many times, and I am happy to share that she is pregnant with twins. Twin manduas? Anyway, this is actually the first time twin tamandua pups have ever been documented, so it's a really exciting story. But given that Isla has had issues with pups before, and given that twins are such a rarity, we'll call it cautiously exciting. But I'll be hoping for the best, and I'll be trying really hard to get to Cincy again once those pups come into the world. The Louisville Zoo is going to be another one of the facilities that borrows some koalas from the San Diego Zoo this summer in order to help raise awareness of the species at other AZA facilities. 2 of the koala bears. Just kidding. I know koalas aren't bears. I just wanted to poke my Australian listeners. I love you all. Anyway, 2 of the adorable marsupials named Daruk and Talawi will be headed to the zoo the first time the animal will be seen there since the turn of the century. If you have a chance, you have to go see these adorable koalas at the Louisville Zoo. Hey, remember when I did a deep dive on the whole FOIA request thing and warned zoos that they need to be aware that threat is always out there now? Well, I have another example of that to share, though this time it's nothing even close to bad news. But it's still kind of fascinating to see this happening. So we all know that giant pandas are returning to the San Diego Zoo, but the facility has been tight-lipped on when to expect the bears. However, the media has now shared information on the topic because of a FOIA request that obtained the application submitted to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for the import of the pandas. In the request, the park said the panda habitat would be fully renovated and ready for use by the start of June, meaning the bears could arrive at any time after that, with the expectation that the arrival would be sooner rather than later. That means that the pandas could arrive any day now, or not, to be fair. And look, normally I wouldn't share this information since the zoo hasn't shared it yet, but honestly, it's all over the press. If you're in this world, you've seen this a bunch. So I feel I would be remiss to not also put it in here and talk about it. It's not like I'm saying anything that isn't out there. And it's interesting. The request actually really dug in, and they shared some additional information, some of which I already knew, including that the habitat, which used to be 2 habitats, has been combined into 1 larger habitat, and that the enlarged exhibit has room for up to 4 bears, though only 2 are coming at this time. The paperwork also shows that if any cubs are born, they will stay in San Diego until at least the age of 2, but that they must return to China within 4 years of their birth. So, some interesting little nuggets about the giant panda loan to San Diego. And our last story this week will actually stick with giant pandas. So, I feel like everyone knows the story of how giant pandas came to live in the United States during the Nixon administration because the First Lady was so enamored with them. Imagine my surprise when I discovered that panda bears had lived in the U.S. before that happened, though not for some time. Turns out that the Library of Congress was recently inspired by the announcement of giant pandas coming to the National Zoo in Washington, D.C., so they started searching their collections for any giant panda content they might have. One of the things they found was a set of Works Progress Administration posters advertising the very first giant panda exhibit at a U.S. zoo. It turns out that in 1930, the Brookfield Zoo outside of Chicago became the first U.S. zoo to exhibit giant pandas. Who knew? Fun little trivia fact for y'all. And that brings us to...
Conservation! News time! Oh yeah!
All right, so I have just one story in this category this week, and it's a short one, but it's a doozy. I kind of want y'all to think about it. So we often spend most, if not all of our time in the conservation news section talking about the effect humans have on the animals of this planet. Now, multiple studies have found yet another impact humans are having. Our voices are scarier to other animals than the sounds of any other apex predators, even the ones that regularly consume prey species. Like if you're a prey species that gets eaten by a certain animal, you're still more scared to hear human voices than to hear the call of the animal that will eat you. In fact, in one such test on Tasmanian marsupials, the sound of human voices made the animals 2.4 times more likely to run away than any other predator sounds. The basic takeaway here is exactly as bad as it sounds. All around the globe, wildlife has learned that humanity is the biggest threat to its survival. I find this just fascinating and heartbreaking all at once. Apparently, it's not just human women who would choose a bear in the woods over an unknown man. All animals, including all of the prey species out there, would choose the bear over any human. Something to think about.
In other news.
All right, so if you know me, you know that I love corvids. Ravens, crows, and the rest are they're just awesome. They constantly shock and impress me. They are so amazingly smart, and a new study is actually showing just how smart they really are. The study showed that crows have counting abilities far beyond what had been previously believed, with the birds exhibiting behaviors similar to human toddlers when they are first learning to count. In fact, crows use their voices to communicate specific quantities, which is something that has never been documented in any animal except humans. That's absolutely incredible. Crows are just so awesome. Also, remember the whole orcas smashing boats thing that came up a little while ago? Well, the trend is still continuing, especially amongst younger orcas. And scientists looking at the behavior keep reaching the same conclusion even as they get more data. The orcas are doing so because they think it's fun. The children and teens of the pods tend to be the most destructive when it comes to smashing boats, and scientists have actually seen the behavior be passed on from whale to whale. This is not the first time the species has been documented learning and sharing weird and surprising behaviors that seem to be taking place just for the fun of it. So, it's pretty fascinating to see this happening in real time and in such a unique way. Sorry to all the yacht owners out there, ? Anyway, and then speaking of rich people, there is a house for sale in Florida that costs a cool $3.3 million. But check this out. It has a backyard that literally backs right up to a spring off Crystal River, a place where a lot of manatees hang out in the water. The spring is warm enough to be a safe haven for them. And the backyard literally butts up against it. You can just hang out with manatees right there in your backyard. Obviously, can't touch them, can't feed them all the good things that you want to do. You can't, but they'd be right there. You could just have manatees as your neighbors. On a completely unrelated note, I'm thinking of changing Rossifari from a podcast to a cult, and getting enough of you to give me money for the cult to buy this as our base of operations. Join us, won't you? Ooh, that got weird and creepy.
Oh, animal holidays. Animal holidays. Hey!
All right, it is June, which is Zoo and Aquarium Month, World Oceans Month, and Orca Month. Especially the ones that like to destroy the boats of the rich. Anyway, then moving on to our individual days. June 8th is World Oceans Day. June 9th starts Sea Turtle Week, one of my favorite weeks. June 12th is National Cougar Day. And the 13th is National Pigeon Day. And those are your animal holidays for the week. All right, so there you have it, folks. Another episode of Rossifari Zoo News is done. But before we go, I want to take a moment to say thank you to my Red Panda level patrons, Dr. Laura Schenk, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, and Jenny Owens. And I'd also like to say thank you to everyone who contributed stories this week, including Anya Keene, Colleen Lenahan, Kim Cooley-Croninger, Carrie Kirkpatrick, Kevin Williams, Marianne Rossi, Sam Evans, Ann Yoshioka, Karen Musklow, Lynn Vesley Gross, Ali Malensky, Kay Malensky, the Malenskys, Emily Rockbuck, Miles Rossi, Jay Meredith, Dr. Laura Schenk, Dr. Zoe Rossi, Matt Patford, and Michaela Baratka. Thank you all so much for contributing. We'll be back here on Tuesday with a brand new interview episode that may or may not have something to do with one of the zoo news things we talked about today. And until then, don't forget, friends, the words newsy credits backwards. Ars Steiderk, Yiswen.
The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo.
He then started to show signs of a gastrointestinal instruction? What?